All right, guys. Try my best to be respectful of everyone's time tonight. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started for today. So happy Financial Literacy Month. We are so excited that you all are entering this event this evening. The event is called Finding Your Balance, Budgeting and Saving. This is our third webinar series to kick off Financial Literacy Month. I'm super excited that you guys are here. My name is Tiara Bird, and I am the Assistant Director of Career and Personal Development with VCU Office of Alumni Relations. Before I introduce our speaker for today's conversation, I would like to go over a few housekeeping points. We will be recording this event, so if you missed something or if you blinked too hard, or even if you joined a little bit later, you will have access to the recording. It will be sent to you. You will receive it. So don't worry if you missed something. There is also live closed captioning available. So to access this live closed captioning, you want to locate the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. Once clicked, select Show Subtitles from the menu. And if you're having issues with trying to find the captions, I want you to send a message to our VCU alumni chat bot for assistance. I also would like to thank those that were able to submit questions prior to registering for this event. We got a lot of great questions to cover tonight. I'm super excited about that. But we want to wait until the end of the event. We're going to get to all of the questions. If you have questions throughout the event, we will try our best to capture them, but we're going to answer them at the end of the presentation. All right. All right, so I was about to say drum roll, please. I'm going to introduce the presenter for tonight, Sabrina Guerin. She is the Senior Adult Financial Education Specialist for Virginia Credit Union. To Sabrina, being financially confident starts with having the right skills and tools to make smart financial decisions. With almost 7 years of financial education experience, Sabrina is passionate about enriching the lives in her community and giving people the support they need to reach their financial goals. A creative at heart, in her free time, Sabrina loves spending time with her family and fur baby, as well as volunteering and serving on the SPCS Alumni Association Board at the University of Richmond. Sabrina, we are so excited to have you present tonight. I have my notebook ready. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, VCU Alumni Relations, for inviting me to spend some time talking to you all this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about finding the balance between budgeting and saving. This evening, you'll find me sharing a number of personal stories as I've navigated my own balance and financial journey. In fact, over the Easter weekend, my eldest niece visited my husband and I at our new home for the first time. My niece is in her mid-20s, so her and I are not too far off in age. And over the years, I've just tried to be a good example for her and my other nieces and nephews in the choices that I've made professionally and personally. So as we're visiting with one another, she begins to tell me her own financial goal of owning a home one day. But, she said, I just can't seem to find the balance of budgeting, paying all of my bills, and saving money for a down payment. And this is something that many of us have either experienced in the past or is currently searching for that balance, regardless of the goal in mind. So tonight, I hope to provide some insight and encouragement to you and wherever you are in your financial journey. So let's talk about the B word, budget. For many of us, the act of creating a budget is associated with the feeling of constraint and having to limit the way that we enjoy spending our hard-earned money. But the reality of budgeting is it's the act of you taking control over your finances by deciding how you choose to spend, save, give, and invest your money. Your budget is your plan on how to manage your cash flow over a period or cycle of time, whether that be monthly, quarterly, or annually. Now, there are a few facts about budgeting that may or may not surprise you that I wanted to share. So approximately 35% of the US population uses a budget. But of that 35%, 62% feel more confident about their finances. 65% do not use a budget at all, and they have no idea how much money they spent last month. I want to repeat that. 65% do not use a budget and they have no idea how much money they spent last month. 33% report that they wish they had spent less. And 44% of those surveyed stated that money was a main source of stress. Many of you may or may not have heard the direct link between stress and mental health with finances. So keep that in mind as we continue on this evening. So why budget? There are many valuable reasons and benefits to budgeting, but we're going to talk about 3 of the reasons this evening. The first, it's going to help you reach your financial goals. Like I stated earlier, my niece in her mid-20s graduated college, looking to get into her career field, possibly go into grad school. She has a big financial goal in mind, and that's buying a home. Home ownership is a huge financial goal that many of us find ourselves seeking after. It's hard to find that balance of how do I put money aside for that down payment? How do I already tackle the bills and the responsibilities that I have right now with the goal in mind? So regardless of what your goals are, having a plan for your money will ultimately help you make those goals a reality. Number 2, with a budget, you can have a clear vision of your expenses, making it easier to plan ahead and have more control over your finances. And number 3, budgeting can help you avoid unnecessary debt. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself about a time where an expense, planned or unplanned, took you by surprise. In that moment, did you have to put that purchase on your credit card? I can tell you it's happened to me. You're all VCU alumni, which means at some point you've spent some time in Richmond. One thing I have learned about living in this wonderful metro area is that the deer love to run into the roadway, no matter what part of Richmond you're at. A few years ago, I was not so lucky and hit one coming home one night. It actually happened twice, but we're going to talk about the first time. As one can imagine, it did quite a bit of damage to my vehicle. And while I was prepared to pay the insurance deductible, I was not prepared to pay for the extra cost of renting a car because the body shop took longer than expected and I ran out of rental coverage. So I had to come up out of pocket to pay extra rental coverage for that vehicle repair. So as you begin to plan out your budget, it's important to identify your goals and to help keep your budget and spending as a focus and a priority. As you envision what you want to accomplish in the short and long terms, creating SMART goals will help keep you on track. Having a specific goal in mind will help you give yourself a target to build your plan around. It's important to make your goal measurable so you can track your progress. Make sure your goal is obtainable. If your goal is unrealistic or unobtainable, you'll find yourself getting frustrated and quitting. Having your goals be relevant and align them with your core values, you can bring your hard work and your hard-earned money meaning to life. And it give yourself a deadline and hold yourself accountable to it. It's important to know what you're looking at, what your progress is going to be, and know that you've set a deadline for yourself. So let's talk about the difference between some short-term and long-term financial goals. You'll use short-term savings or short-term saving goals. Those are goals that you want to accomplish sooner than a year. So some examples of that would be if you're planning a trip or vacation, holiday spending, and maybe even an emergency savings. My husband and I are going on a trip this August. So we have already kind of set some financial short-term goals for ourselves so that we know that, it's not going to be added expense. We're not going to be taken by surprise with this trip, and that all of our ducks in a row so that not only can we financially be prepared for this trip, but we can be financially comfortable with the trip. Now, with long-term goals, You'll use long-term savings or savings goals to achieve what you want or need to accomplish long-term. So usually 5 to 10 years from now. So a few of those examples would be if you have a child that you're looking to send to college one day, a 529 savings plan is something that would be a long-term goal. Your own education, if you are looking to go back to school. Retirement is a long-term goal. And then buying a house or even a car can be a long-term goal for yourself. Now, as we talk about creating a budget, it's helpful to view your budget as a spending plan. This is how you plan to spend your money, and it helps you give control over your money. As you're planning, start with what you know. What are your fixed expenditures? Do you have a mortgage that you pay? Do you have rent every month? Then you're going to take an estimated guess with things that you may not know offhand. Every year, I know that my car registration is due in the spring. And every year, I can never seem to remember exactly how much it costs. So I create an annual spending plan or my budget, and I round up to ensure that I have enough set aside for when that expense comes up. The same happens with personal property taxes. Some counties charge it twice a year and break that up for you. Some charges it all at once. We recently moved from Hanover, and that county in particular, you pay it all at once in February. Because of depreciation, you may not know what your personal property taxes are going to be on your vehicle. So I always use last year's amount or about how much I paid last year to make sure that I have enough set aside for this year. So as I create that plan, I make sure that I have enough. So it's important to track what you actually spend each month and make sure you adjust where needed. So one common misconception about creating a plan for your finances is that it's set in stone. Remember, be flexible and make adjustments as you see fit, and give yourself a little grace. Now, when it comes to spending, we often put our immediate desires ahead of our important future needs, and that's reflected in how we choose to spend. So uncovering your why behind your buying can help you prioritize your spending and align your budget with what your financial goals are. Prioritizing your spending can take a moment before a planned or unplanned purchase. Pause and ask yourself some questions. Do I need this? Do I need this now? Am I getting the best deal for this item? Could I get this item somewhere for less? What happens if I didn't buy this item at all? Could I use this money towards my savings goal or towards paying off debt? Does this purchase provide any financial value for me or my household in the future? I will tell you, I love to find a good bargain at TJ Maxx or at Marshall's. And I have gotten to the point where either I don't go at all because I know that that is not conducive to my financial goal, or if I do, before I select an item, I always stop and ask myself, like, do I really need this item? Do I really want it? Is it, catching my attention because of the bright colors or whatever it may be? I always just give myself some pause. That also means I walk around the store quite a bit of times because I'm looking at the item, deciding whether or not I need it. So in the previous slide, I mentioned uncovering your why behind your buying, but I want to dig a little deeper here so we can gain a better understanding of how our emotions or habits can influence the way that we spend our money. A few of these habits or emotions can be keeping up with the Joneses, regular spending habits, retail therapy, and money as love. I want you to keep in mind my Marshall story as we continue. So keeping up with the Joneses. A lot of us have probably heard that phrase, and you can envision your neighbors peeking over the fence to see what the latest thing your neighbor has purchased, whether it be a boat or the new car. But today, I would say the modern version of keeping up with the Joneses happens in the palm of our hands: social media. So I am guilty of the Stanley Cup craze. I am an avid water drinker. I like my water to be at a specific temperature. And when I saw the Stanley Cups going viral on social media, I had to get one. So that is a perfect example of how social media, your friends, your peers can play into the keeping up with the Joneses. It's not always just what your neighbor's doing or who has the bigger house or who's doing the most home improvement. Your spending habits. We all have them. A few years ago, part of my commute was going to Starbucks. I would spend about $6 on my drink order. And if I did the math, a 5-day work week would be $30 a week, which turns into about $120 a month. And if you look at the whole year, that's over $1,400. And, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a cup of coffee every morning, but I could not justify spending that kind of money on Starbucks every single day. It did not align with my financial goals. So I knew it was a habit that I had and I had to break. So I still wanted to have that sense of enjoyment when I had my favorite coffee beverage, but I decided to budget it. So each month I would set aside about, I think, $50 for the entire month. I mean, that cut that thing down significantly. I was allowed to spend that $50 however I wanted it. So if I wanted to go and spend it all in the first week, I could. If I could, stretch it out, I would. But it allowed myself to have something that I enjoyed, but it put some constraint on myself so that I could align my spending plan and my budget with my goals. As time went on, I felt like I didn't really need to make that daily trip. It became easier. So that $50 lasted a little bit longer than the month. And then I started treating that trip to Starbucks as a treat. My husband and I would go grocery shopping. We'd grab Starbucks. Or if we took a trip around the shore pump, we would enjoy a nice, meaningful cup of coffee. So as you're creating your spending plan, think about any habits that you may have or something that you may buy on a regular basis and examine if that habit is either affordable or is it helping you work towards your goals. Retail therapy. Retail therapy, shopping that makes us feel good, or sales or good deals that are exciting or enticing to us. So for many, retail therapy is a very real thing to consider when we budget and can be a hurdle if it goes unchecked. And I'm sure we've all experienced a level of retail therapy in our time. It's always, it's not always what they depict on movies where you see the heartbroken girl shopping away her feelings after a breakup. But retail therapy can look different for anyone, and it's not always driven by negative feelings or sadness. Did you get promoted? Did you land a new job? Do you want to reward yourself with something? Are you feeling frustrated and have the feeling that you've lost control over something and you wanted to cope with that feeling by spending? Those are all examples of retail therapy. Now, I'm not saying don't reward yourself or treat yourself to some nice things, but if you begin to see the way that you spend your money is directly tied to your emotions, this could be a sign that your coping method is retail therapy. Money as love. When it's someone's birthday or you see a GoFundMe posted on social media, do you find yourself overwhelmingly obligated to give? Do you feel obligated to buy someone something if they do something nice for you? The act of giving in these ways might be a sign that money is how you express love or emotions to others. Times to be mindful of this is when it impacts your budget and your financial goals. So if you find yourself overspending, taking funds from your savings, or tapping into other areas of your budget to share or spend on others, that is a sign that money is your love language. If you're a big gift giver or donating to charity is a passion of yours, consider putting these things into your budget. So one example would be the holiday season in December. Whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, If there is a gift giving season in your life, or if you have a month where everyone's birthday lives, me and my sisters, all of our birthdays are in September. I like to think about taking that sum of money. Like if I know I'm going to spend $500 on my family for Christmas, to make it not such a significant expense at the end of the year, I take that amount and I divide it by 12, or I divide it by 52. And I try to break it up into different smaller chunks throughout the year. So by the end of the year, I have that amount built into my budget, and I can feel a little bit better about spending at the end of the year. So again, if it's a passion of yours, by building it into your budget, you're still able to be charitable, but still maintain control over your spending and your progress towards your financial goals. I also like to add that being charitable does not always mean it is a monetary donation. Your time is money and your time is valuable. Now, with any budget or spending plan, it's helpful to know where your money is going exactly. While everyone has a different preference on how they track their spending, remember it's important to take a regular look at where your money is going and evaluate if it aligns with your goals. So for some of us, that might be going old school and using pen and paper. Some might find it useful to do a spreadsheet. But personally, I like to track my spending with my financial institution's mobile app. That way I can not only see where my money is going and how I'm spending it, but it can also bring awareness to any potential fraudulent purchase or incorrect purchases that is going on my account. So a couple years ago, my husband and I went on a weekend trip, and I reserved our hotel on my credit card. When we checked in, we were all good, they had my reservation, but when we checked out, they said that the card was charged and then they would email me my final invoice and everything was taken care of. So I got the email, everything looked correct. So I didn't really pay any attention to it right away. Everything looked okay. But a couple of weeks went by and I checked my credit card statement and I saw the hotel had charged us twice the amount for our stay. So they charged us the full amount for our stay when under the reservation, and then they charged us for the actual amount of our stay. So I had to call the credit card company and the hotel to get that negotiated and disputed. So it's vital to ensure that you not only track the expected expenses that you have, but make sure that they're accurate. I will note that depending on your financial institution, or if you're using a debit or a credit card, there are timeframes that you have to report or dispute charges if they're incorrect or fraudulent, and it's usually about 90 days. So if you have not paid attention to the transactions that are debited on your debit card or on your bank statements, and let's say 8 months have went by, you may or may not get that money back. So it's important to make it a habit and regularly check your statements. Now, we've spent some time talking about budgeting and aligning our spending plans with your financial goals. But the one common question I get, and the same question that my niece asked, is how do you save when it feels like so much of our income is going out as soon as we get it? Well, I like to say it's finding the right balance. When it comes to saving, experts recommend the following 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your income should go to your needs. That's shelter, food, clothing, anything that we have to live. 30% should go to your wants. Yes, I said wants. Budgeting is your plan and how you take control over your finances. And that doesn't mean taking all of the fun and the enjoyment from your life. 20% should go towards your savings or paying down any debt that you may have, like credit card debt. Now, understanding how savings is allocated in your budget with the 50-30-20 rule, you may still be asking yourself ways that you can maximize your income, thus increasing your savings capability. As you plan your budget, examine your spending. You might find some ways where you can trim out your expenses. Now, we've already touched on the importance of tracking your expenses by checking your monthly bank statements, but taking a monthly look, you can, let's say you find some monthly subscriptions or memberships that you may be paying for that could be reduced or limited altogether. That's money where you can start saving. One of my favorite ways to save or find where I can save is just seeking out the best deal. Have you shopped around for the best insurance premiums lately? What about your cell phone or your cable plans? You might be surprised to find some savings there by switching cell phone plans or providers. Depending on your provider, you may be getting not be getting the best deal because you haven't upgraded your plan. About every year or so, I do call my cell phone plan provider and I just have them take a once over. Am I using the data that I'm paying for? Is there a way that I can trim that back if I don't need it? What would that do to, does it slow my phone down? So I evaluate all of those things. And if I can trim back, I will. Insurance premiums are another thing that you can probably find some savings at. Shopping around. A lot of the times your insurance companies may not tell you, hey, you've been a great driver for the last 10 years. We're going to give you a discount. So it's good to shop around. Maybe you have your insurance, your car insurance through one company, or if you have renters or homeowners with another, bundling can help provide some savings. Now, the next one, who doesn't like a good DIY? Do you have a skill that can save you money by tackling a small household project or repair yourself? I mentioned earlier, my husband and I moved into our home back in July. Well, I had to paint. I am not okay with looking at plain white walls. So I decided that I was going to paint it myself. Did I do a great job? Probably not. There's parts where I missed and had to touch up, but I saved myself hundreds of dollars by doing it myself. I will not, however, give myself a haircut because I know that I don't have a skill, that is not a talent in my wheelhouse, and I would end up having to pay someone even more. So assess your skills and what you feel comfortable doing and try to save some money by tackling those things yourself. Avoid impulse buying. Now, this is one that I can say I've struggled with sometimes, but with creating a shopping list and checking the pantry before heading out to the store, or avoiding the temptation altogether, can really save your budget. If you know that you need to get your spending under control, like myself at one point in time, I tend to avoid going to the stores where I know I have the tendency to impulse spend. Remember, I said that Marshall's trip I used to make? If I know I have to get things under control, I just avoid it altogether. Also, if you know that, impulse spending is something that you do, unsubscribe from the marketing emails, unsubscribe from the text messages. And then the last one is finding free or low cost events and entertainment. Do you like to go on a hike with you and your family? Going to the library? There are free festivals and events that you can go to. Those are all ways that you can save where you can. Another effective way to save is by making it automatic and paying yourself first. By setting up an automatic transfer or a direct deposit straight into your savings account, you can make the act of putting money aside easier. Move it before you can see it or miss it. If you have multiple goals like building an emergency fund or saving for a trip, maybe a down payment on a home, having multiple savings accounts for each goal can be a great way to allocate where you're setting your funds aside. Now, if your employer offers retirement savings, or if you've decided to actively save towards your future, you can also have those funds come directly out of your paycheck. Once you've made a significant investment into your savings, be sure you're maximizing your account by utilizing higher yield savings like a money market to take advantage of higher dividends. Now, I want to briefly touch on emergency savings, how it can look a bit different than your other savings goals. So experts say when it comes to setting money aside for an emergency, you should try to strive and save about 3 times of your monthly net pay. Now, an emergency can look different for all of us, but unexpected expenses such as a health emergency or unplanned car repair can take anyone's budget by surprise. If an emergency happens and you find yourself tapping into your savings, be sure to have a plan to pay yourself back to rebuild that nest egg. If you find yourself using like a credit card for emergencies, I personally like to travel with one for an emergency if we're out of town. I have to have a plan to pay that back. Now, regardless of where you are in your life or your financial journey, finding the balance between budgeting and savings is a key part to achieving your financial goals and living a life more confidently from day to day. And Virginia Credit Union is here to help you along that way. So I'm going to leave this up for just a moment. Please visit our website. We have a lot of online tools and resources that can help you along your journey, and you can continue this learning process. And I want to say thank you again for allowing me to spend this time with you. Actually ended a little early. I got excited and spoke kind of fast. So we're here for questions.
Awesome, Sabrina. This is great. Thank you, God. Thank you so much. I was taking notes as you were finishing up. There was a lot of great information. I actually learned a few things myself. All the tips were amazing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with the questions that came from the registration form. But if anyone else has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature, or you can put them in the chat. But we're going to go ahead and get to the questions that came from the form. So the first question is, how can we better budget for success as a graduate student?
As a graduate student, so one thing that I would be mindful of is if you are a graduate student that's working, I would take advantage of any grants and scholarships and anything that you can think of to help financially curb the expense of going to grad school. I personally graduated from grad school back in August, so I firsthand understand what that financial obligation looks like. The textbooks are expensive. If you have things, that you normally do where you can get extra income, that is now dipped back a little bit because you're devoting your time to school. So I would be mindful of any of those extra expenses that are coming in and how you can curb them with financial aid without necessarily getting into even more financial debt with student loans. So again, scholarships, grants, work study programs are a way to factor that into your budget.
Awesome. That was great. That was super helpful. I didn't know all of those resources were available to grad students, so that's awesome. So the next question that we have, it is, how do you budget with continuing price increases? So inflation, I know you spoke about a lot of different ways to save and budget, but with inflation and everything being so expensive, what's your best advice for budgeting with the continuing price increases?
My first thing I would recommend is just reassess what you're currently buying and spending on, and look for other options. One thing I always give personal examples because I think that's the best way to connect and to share real life with other people. We all knew how much eggs cost, right? And my husband and I, it's just the two of us. We don't really go through eggs that much, but my parents, they do all of the time. So I was shopping and I happened to go to, I think it was Costco, and I saw that they were on a really good deal, and I bought them their eggs because I'm like, it's $6 here and you get like twice as much than you do at the grocery store. So I would say look at other options, whether it's buying wholesale or switching brands. I know my husband, if he heard me right now, would laugh because I am very devoted to a very specific brand of butter because that's how I was raised. When you bake, you have to have a specific brand.
Here you go.
It's not, that is a good one, but it's Land O'Lakes.
Land O'Lakes. Okay, awesome.
Old school.
Okay.
And it costs a lot. So I decided, okay, if I'm still going to bake, I'm going to use that particular brand for something where I know I can taste and see the difference, and then maybe cut back and use a store brand for something else. Shop around, look at deals, look at coupons, digital ads.
Mhm.
I know that a lot of the grocery stores, you can download the app. So part of it is just being creative and finding those ways to save. And the other thing I would say is look at your bank statements and see what you're spending. One thing that I noticed during the higher point of inflation was the cost of trash pickup was more in my area because they charged a high fuel rate. So even though it was only like $1 and some change to my regular bill, but it was still $1 and some change that I was not trying to spend when everything else was increasing in price. So I would just look at your statements and look at any additional fees and things like that, and assess it. And then there's a lot of other apps like Gas Buddy is something that you can use to help find the best price on gas. So I would use your online resources, and use your network. As crazy as it sounds to use your network for grocery shopping or to save on money on different things, but you don't know if someone's finding a better deal somewhere else, and can help you out with it.
Awesome. That is great. I think when you were speaking, what popped up in my head was that, oh my gosh, everything is so expensive from food to clothes to just everything. How do we, stay afloat? Because it seems like everything is increasing like by the hour, by the minute. And kind of like something that has worked for me is making sure that I feel like there's no way you can beat inflation, right? So it's like increasing income if you have the time and if you have the capacity and the bandwidth to do that, but also like trying to figure out, like you said earlier, Sabrina, can you cut out a subscription? Do you really need, are you utilizing that gym membership? Do you really need, I don't know, Starbucks every day? So just like, are there ways to increase your income? And then also,
Mhm.
are there ways to decrease your expenses? But of course, as you mentioned, that starts with assessing where you are, what your numbers are looking like. So that was helpful. Thank you for that. The next question that we have is how to best tackle paying down debt and how to save for an emergency savings account. And I know you touched on emergency savings account, but if someone wants to start one from scratch, how would what would that look like while paying down debt?
So my little tidbit for paying down debt is there's a couple of ways that you can go about it. The first one, we would say, is like the snowball effect. You can either take if you did the snowball effect, I would take if it's a credit card balance or if it's a personal loan, take the smallest amount that you owe. So if you have a $500 credit card or a $300 credit card, pay that one off first. And then the minimum payment that you were making on that card, apply it to the next card. And then you work on tackling that one. And then once you've paid that one off, you now take the minimum payment of those two credit cards and you add it extra to the note, and it just trickles and snowballs down. I would also say be patient. I know it gets frustrating sometimes when you want to just get to the finish line and it feels like you're just working and working and working, but give yourself grace and be patient and know that your hard work is going to pay off.
Mhm.
And now when it comes to savings, yes, saving 20% or 10% is ideal and three times your income. But I understand that that is also hard for a lot of us, especially in an inflation economy. So my biggest recommendation would be start where you can. If it's $1 every pay period, you have started. And then once you feel comfortable and you don't even see it, you don't even miss it, increase it.
Mhm.
The other tip that an old colleague of mine gave me one day that I wish I would have done years ago if I would have known. I had paid off like my 2008 Honda Civic years ago. And I was making that, $300 car payment every month with ease. I had worked it into my budget. Well, then I paid the car off and I was like, oh, I have $300 in my budget now. No, no, I should have put that money into my savings account because
Mhm.
it was already built into my budget. I wasn't going to miss it. And
Mhm.
then when, it was time to replace that vehicle, I had to readjust my budget into paying a car note again. So those little things just keep in the back of your mind. I told myself, if I ever pay a car off again, I am going to keep that money going into a savings account so I can easily, mindfully build up my savings that way.
That was so helpful. I have a car note now, and I'm like, "No, I can't wait to pay the car off and then continue to, to deposit that money into a savings account because we need to save more overall. Everyone needs to save more, and it's, as you said, it's so hard doing inflation. So it's like a lot of people are in survival mode, just trying to
Mhm.
make sure they, cover their gas, their groceries. It's hard and times are tight. So that was a great answer. So we have a couple more questions,
Okay.
and if you are answering or if you're asking questions in the chat, I see them. We're going to get to them in just a second. So the next question that we have, this is a good one. How to budget with fluctuating income?
The fluctuating income.
Mhm.
One thing, well, we all know with fluctuating income, you should first pinpoint your fixed expenses. So if you pay rent or pay a mortgage, I would make sure that those are the priority. Um, and when you're looking at everything, like bust out the books, look at all of your expenses. And I would set a goal of how much you know that you have to make that end meet. Before I got into the credit union world and graduated, I served tables. So I know what it's like to not know how much money I was going to make that night. And I had rent, I had a car payment, and I was doing it all alone. And I had to sacrifice a lot so that I could make sure that I was making that amount of money I needed. But what I did was I personally had to take cash every time I came home, and I set it physically aside so that I knew that I didn't lose track of it, that I knew, okay, you got to pay the rent, you got to pay that car note, and you got to pay insurance. So I prioritized what I knew my fixed expenses were, and I made sure that that money was set aside first. It is hard with a fluctuating income. I would also maybe recommend looking at if you can, if you, whether you get paid monthly, bi-monthly, or whatever the frequency is, sometimes taking your bills and splitting them in half. So if you have rent that's $1,000 and a car payment, if it's possible to split it in half so that you know by the end of the month, you've got everything paid for. Just be mindful of when you do that, that you have the full amount of what's due. So if you start on the end of the month, you don't want to only pay half of your rent or half of your mortgage. You want to make sure that you've given yourself some grace and a time frame to utilize that time and make sure that you can maybe split it. That could take some of the pressure off of your income coming in.
Awesome. That was a great answer. I hope you guys are taking notes. I had to like jot down some notes really quickly. So the next question that we have, what are some tools for maintaining a budget? And then it also has cash versus debit card.
So I'm going to address the cash versus debit card first. I think that's going to be a personal preference. Um, for me, I don't like carrying cash, um, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, my wallet is like busting out with change. And I have put money in my back pocket before and then put my cell phone back there, and I pull out my phone and my $20 bill goes flying. But if you are someone that knows, like if I put cash in an envelope and that is all I have to spend, I say do what works for you and what makes the most sense for you. Now, with debit cards, um, I one of my favorite recommendations when it comes to like impulse buying or spending with your debit card is, as convenient as it is, take your card off of your web browser, take it off of Apple Pay or Google Pay, just remove the convenience. So, back in the day when, our grandparents or my parents would say, like, they would put their credit cards in the freezer for emergencies and they would have to like wait and let it defrost before they can use it. It's kind of like it's a similar concept. So, putting a barrier between you and spending. So if you know that, those late night, I can't sleep, so I'm going to just browse on Amazon and I might as well just buy all the things in my shopping cart because my credit card is saved or my debit card is saved. remove it. Because I know for me, if I'm comfortable and I'm relaxing, if I have to get up and get that card, then I just don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to do it. So that can be helpful. And then what was the first part of the question?
Yeah. So, what are some tools for maintaining a budget or a spending plan?
So one of the things that I have found helpful is actually having two checking accounts with the same financial institution for two reasons. The first one is I know every time I get paid, I have a set amount of money that I need to set aside for my bills. So I put that into that checking account and I do not touch that checking account. That is where my automatic payments come out of. That's where my ACH comes out of. That is where I pay the important things. The second account, I keep just my 30% of what my wants. So, I put I get gas. That's where I put that money. If we're going to go out to lunch, that's where I put that money. And I keep it separate so that I don't accidentally dip into my bill budget. The other reason why I like that method is back a few years ago, my husband now, but we were then fiancés, we were paying rent and we didn't have shared accounts. So I that month put all of our money or all of the bill money into his checking account because he was going to pay those bills for that month. Well, his debit card was compromised. And when I say everything was taken out of the account, like we may have had a few $100s left, but we did not have rent. We didn't have car payments. Everything was gone. And it took a little while because it was a checking account to get that money back. So thankfully I was able to put it on our credit card, which was not ideal. And not everyone may have that ability to put that much money on a credit card or feel comfortable doing it. But I knew we had to do something. So that moment on, I said, I'm keeping our bill money separate so that in the event that our debit card's compromised or something happens, I can easily move that money over to the next account where that debit card is no longer connected and kind of protect my money that way. So it's a twofold of why I do that.
Awesome. 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 Great answer. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think with me, I have an 8-month-old currently. So like during my maternity leave, I was like on Amazon, I was on Target, and I realized that my card is on there. And literally when you want to make a purchase, they just need you to verify the three, I think it's the CVC code at the
Mhm.
end because it's already on there. And it is so easy to make so many purchases. So I had to take my card off of there. And I think it's an old debit or credit card on there that I have not I haven't updated my new information. And it's been so helpful. I'm upset sometimes, but I forget about it after like 24 hours. So I feel like, and it's helped me save a lot of money. So that's just another tip that popped up in my head when you were talking about that. But great answer. So next, our next question is there any more advice you can give around impulse spending?
Yes, I like to say I'm a recovered impulse spender. Sometimes I still impulse spend.
Mhm.
Um, there are times where I've just had to unsubscribe because if I saw my favorite store come with a sale or you got a special gift, I was considering it. And sometimes it wasn't something that was on my list. It wasn't something that I needed, but I wanted to get the deal. So I had to unsubscribe from those things. I also love to just, I'll subscribe for the 15% off or, your first purchase, but then I have to immediately go back in and remove myself from that marketing email so that I'm not enticed later.
Mhm.
Um, I I have to have a list when I go to the store. If I don't, I am going to impulse buy at the grocery store. Um, One thing that COVID actually helped with that was I kind of wanted to avoid that people interaction like everyone else did. So I started doing grocery pickup. A lot of stores that did not offer that prior to COVID still offer that service and it's free 99% of the time, I believe.
Mhm.
So if you know that you cannot go into Kroger or you can't go into Walmart or Food Lion without buying, those in cap specials, then my recommendation would be do your grocery shopping online and pick it up. Don't even go into the store. That will take one layer of temptation out of that for you. And then I would say, like, give yourself a budget. Like, if you know that once a month that you have to buy something for yourself, or you just, you enjoy going to Short Pump or wherever you may be, or Amazon. Again, budgeting is not about taking that fun away. It's not about restricting things and it's like, oh, I have to budget. It gives you control so that you can say, I am choosing to spend this money on A, B, C, and D. I have empowered myself by doing that because I have set the money aside.
Mhm.
And be forgiving to yourself. If there have been times where I go, I'm like, oh, I really shouldn't have bought that.
Mhm.
Um, Instead of beating myself up about it and then getting discouraged, I just say, either you can return it because you got your receipt, or you just need to remember this moment the next time you go into the store and say, how did that align with my goals?
Mhm. Awesome. That was really good. It is so hard. I think grocery pickup is a lifesaver. And while you were talking, I was like, man, I just bought groceries. So I had a grocery pickup scheduled, and I said, no, I want to go into the store and buy my own groceries. I went into the store on an empty stomach and spent $50
Yes.
more than my budget. I
Eat
said,
before
Tiara,
you go, and check your pantries. I am notorious for, I know I'm going to cook this meal in my head, and I know, you've got the spices, the essentials and whatnot, but then I go to the store to buy, the protein or the side, and I can't remember, like, do I have rice at home? I don't think I have rice at home. I'm going to pick up a bag of rice just in case. And I get home and there's like a 5-pound bag of rice that I have never even opened. So now that
yeah,
I have two,
yeah,
check your pantries.
yeah, absolutely. I need to make a note of that. That's great. So, the last question that we have, and I pulled it from the chat, it says, how can we best adjust the 50-30-20 rule if our needs are currently more than 50% of our incomes?
Adjust it. Right now, I would say adjust it. Um, I would first try to cut from the wants if you can. If you know that your needs are more, you always want to make sure that your needs are covered. You have to have a roof over your head. If you work, you have to have transportation to get to work, whether it's a vehicle or if it's public transportation. You have to clothe yourself, you have to eat. So I would say adjust it from maybe some of those things that you want right now. Um, and then work back up to readjusting that way. Or if 20% is not ideal right now, I would start off with 10. um, the biggest thing I can say is just start, because a lot of us just get so overwhelmed or just so defeated from the beginning of, if I can't do, 3 times my income, then I'm going to just wait until I can, or wait until I can.
Mhm.
Get started some way and somehow. Yesterday was tax day. If you have not filed or if you filed your taxes at the last minute, or if you're still waiting for your return, if you get a tax return or a tax refund this year, consider using that as a way to boost your savings. It's an immediate, it's money that you may or may not have been expecting, but if you know that you don't have to rely on it, take a chunk of that and set that aside. You have now given yourself an immediate boost or jump start to your savings. If you have any incentives or bonuses at work, that's a great way to boost your savings. Another thing that I would like to add, though, is um, depending on where you work, I don't know. I know my last employer, like, evaluations were due around this time of year.
Mhm.
If you get a pay raise, let's say you get a 7% pay raise, give yourself like that 2% raise, put that in your pocket. But that 5%, go ahead and put that away. Put that into your savings account, because it's money you didn't have already. You automatically put it in there, whether it's, your actual savings account, or if you want to boost your retirement. That is another way to help yourself readjust those percentages.
Awesome. That was really, really great. Did you guys have any additional questions? I know we're about 2 minutes from the 7 p.m. mark. This has been great. Sabrina has
I'm
provided a
glad.
wealth of knowledge. I have her email address written down. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. We need to use her again. Her contact information is here if you all need it. It's on the screen. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to her. Sabrina, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
amazing. Like, this is great. And we have, like I said, guys, we have one more webinar to kick off Financial Literacy Month. Financial literacy is so important. So make sure you're asking the questions and getting all of the help and tools that you need to be successful. So if you all enjoyed today's conversation, we encourage you to check out more events on our website. There will be one more webinar next week, next Wednesday at 12 o'clock, and it's going to be about retirement. So that's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to moderate that for you all as well. You can join that as well. So we also have a survey. So you will see in the chat box, there will be a short survey for you all to take because we love feedback. We love to make our events that much better for you all. So please fill out the survey. Also, if you're interested in connecting with alumni, or even if you're interested in sharing your knowledge to students and fellow alumni, we would definitely encourage you to join VCU Link. And that information is in the chat as well. You guys asked great questions tonight. We are super excited that you asked great questions because they are very thought-provoking. And I hope you all learned a lot tonight. Lastly, everyone will receive an email within 48 hours if you happen to miss the survey. And if you need additional, if you have additional questions, you can ask myself or you can email Sabrina. And we're going to wrap up tonight. So on behalf of VCU Office of Alumni Relations, thank you so much, Sabrina, for this
Thank
valuable
you.
information. Yes, and thank you for joining us this evening. Go Rams, and you guys have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.